Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. So, back again, we are going to discuss about our next material. Yeah, frankly, this material is actually related to the previous material in which the discussion regarding language and culture. Okay, so today for our meeting 11, the title or the topic is the relationship between language and culture. Okay, so before we start, let's open this meeting by reciting Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, so for the learning objective, we got two learning objective here. Yeah, you are be able to conceptualize the concept and example of the relationship between language and culture properly and accurately through discovery learning. So you are going to be introduced to specific discussion, yeah, regarding the relationship between language and culture that will be discussed all together through discovery learning. And the second one, you are going to be able to develop a summary of overall talk from a seminar related to the relationship between language and culture accurately and properly through watch and summarize activities. So you are going to watch a video specifically in the matter or in the form of seminar regarding relationship between language and culture. Okay, so that's it. Okay guys, for today's exercise you are going to watch and summarize a long talk, yeah, in a form of seminar, an online seminar, let's say, regarding the language and culture. Yeah, so that's why I will not provide you with the exercise it, rather you are going to make a summary of it. I will not point out a specific or a major or was it main aspect that you are going to discuss that you have to write down, but instead you are going to make a summarize by yourself. So you have to pay attention to every little detail of each aspect that is significantly important mentioned within the discussion in a online seminar itself. So you are going to make yourself analyze, yeah, and also summarize the overall talk in terms of its specific and major aspect within the discussion. That's it. Best of luck.
Hello and welcome to the More Than Words podcast, brought to you by Rosetta Stone UK, preparing you for real-world conversations in new languages. I'm Alex Southwaite, and in this podcast series, we immerse ourselves in other cultures by hearing different stories that will inspire, fascinate, and educate. I speak to intrepid travellers, expert linguists, career climbers, and sporting stars as they discuss how language can enrich your life and unlock a door to a new world that enables a deeper connection to the people and places around you. In our very first episode, we delve into language's influence on culture and how an in-depth knowledge allows us to understand different people, customs, and heritage on a far deeper level. And joining me to talk about their own personal stories today are two very exciting guests, Evan Edinger and Susie Dent. Now, Evan is a travel vlogger, photographer, and YouTube star, and Susie is an etymologist, linguist, author, broadcaster, and TV favourite on Countdown. Welcome to you both.
Hi.
Thank you.
So, to start off the discussion, very easy, tell me both, how did you begin your journey into learning languages?
Well, for me, the story I always tell is actually sitting in the bath, weirdly, and looking at shampoo bottles, which, let's face it, probably had the most boring ingredients in the world. And just staring at them before I could read and just being completely entranced by these swirling exotic characters. As I say, it's a good job I didn't know how to decode them because they wouldn't be very interesting. But I was just drawn into them. And also, I think I could just about tell that there were different different kinds of characters as well. So there's probably Cyrillic on there in Arabic. And it kind of grew from there, to be honest. I was very swotty and very geeky long before it became cool. And would sit in the back of my parents' car. We'd be going on trips to the seaside. It'd be incredibly cold. And all I wanted to do was stay in the back of the car and read French and German vocabulary books. Not so that I could do well at school, I think, but just so that I could amass as many words and phrases as I could. So I was slightly strange from that point of view. But, you know, I'm so happy actually that I found that sort of pleasure and that passion quite early on.
And what was your journey to learning languages, Evan?
Because I grew up in the States, you know, I had to take Spanish growing up since like 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, basically every year. And it was just a course that I enjoyed. I just enjoyed foreign languages because I thought they were fun and I excelled at them easily. But then as soon as I graduated from high school, I just kind of let it go because I had that pretty sad mentality of like, when am I going to need Spanish? I live in US of A. And so sadly, I lost a lot of my Spanish. You don't use it, you lose it. And so basically, when I moved to London, I started working at a couple startups. And during my lunch breaks, I started thinking like, what if there was a way I could use my time in my lunch break more effectively so that I was building a skill? And I quickly remembered like, oh, maybe I could learn a language. So I spent about 15 minutes to 30 minutes every like work day just doing a bit of German. And then slowly but surely, I gained enough fluency to hold basic conversations, and then I just kept building upon that until now I can read and write and speak basically.
I think a lot of people, probably similar to you, Evan, maybe when they're at school, they're thinking, why do I need languages? I
Yeah.
can ignore this and turn off during the classroom. What do you think that teachers can do to motivate younger people to want to learn, and encourage them like Susie was encouraged at such a young age?
I think it's such a good idea to just talk more about the cool stuff about a language and the language's culture. I find that when I've initially started learning German, you know, it is just memorize as many words as you can and understand what the infinitives and grammar and things like that. However, when I really started finding a passion for the language was when I started learning more about the intrinsic cultural parts of it. So it's almost, I find, impossible to get past like A2 of a language without at least slightly learning about the culture, such as like you'll have to learn specific verbs and words that don't exist in English because the celebration doesn't exist here, or because that as a phenomenon doesn't really exist in our culture. And so you then start to find it way more interesting. And I feel like if in school teachers tried to bring out more of those like uniquely intrinsic cultural values that the language has with it, maybe kids would be more interested. Like, oh, I didn't know about that. That's quite interesting.
Do you think you've been able to learn a language more easily when you've actually been immersed in the culture yourself then, outside of the classroom environment?
I mean, yeah. I moved to Munich for a month and a half just to try and immerse myself because I figured as much as I liked learning online, it was only going to get me so far. And yeah, forcing myself to be in an area where I just have to speak the language, your brain just goes into fight or flight. All right. I'm fighting to get my hair cut and only speak German. I don't want to go bald, you know. So ended up getting a good haircut, and that was my first like positive experience. I got immersed and my German improved from there. It was, I think the confidence is so hard to build, but getting immersed for a small amount of time and having to use it and being like, oh, people didn't speak in English to me, that's nice. So helps build up my confidence. Yeah.
So, Susie, you talked a little bit about how personally important languages are to you, but how has it helped you professionally to know a number of languages?
Well, two ways. I just want to come back on something actually that Evan said, which I think is really, really important, because he was talking about how building confidence happens quite often when you're talking to somebody in their language, and you know, and then they respond to you in their language and they don't have much, they know English, they will keep that conversation going, because there is nothing more disheartening, and it happens to me so often, when you're in a foreign country and you really try out of respect and because you want to, you know, immerse yourself in that culture. There's nothing more disheartening when you ask something and then they just come straight back at you with English. And that's happened to me so often in Spain particularly, which is why I've decided to really, through Rosetta Stone, really try and learn Spanish, because it's just soul destroying. But when it comes to how it's helped me professionally, well, I guess my whole career, every gig I have is based on language. So in terms of etymology, you know, a grasp of Latin and German, because English is a Germanic language at heart. And then we had the French coming in after the Norman Conquest. And, you know, we've also got so many words from Latin, etc. All of those have helped me hugely to kind of decode a word and to know its kind of linguistic story, I guess. And then also, I think the fact if you are open to another culture and you're open to another language, then that says something about you, and it speaks to your passion, and it speaks very much to your personality. So I think, you know, that is all incredibly important as well. And in terms of culture, I remember just my German teacher somehow managed to navigate the really fine line between not stereotyping a nation and yet also trying to unpick what they call linguistic relativism or whatever, that, you know, trying to unpick that, what does this say about a country? And I remember putting my hand up when she taught us how Germans say, what time is it? And they say, wie spät ist es? How late is it? And I just remember putting my hands up and saying, why do they say how late is it? And she said, well, in my experience, you know, Germans quite often are very anxious that they arrive on time. And if you say how late is it, that already gives you that kind of slight anxiety that you've got to get somewhere punctually. And she said, that's just my experience. You know, you may feel differently. And I loved that. I loved the kind of insight into the personality of a nation, or, you know, or its speakers through little nuggets of their language. And I think that's really important as well. And that sort of set me on a path to probing, you know, what lies behind a word and what it says about an individual or a nation.
You've obviously learned German as well, Evan, and I've watched some of your most recent videos, and there's one where you're talking about how in German you can use one word to describe something, whereas maybe in English it would take 10 words to describe the same phenomenon.
It's so much easier if you don't know what you want to say in German to know what you want to say, because if you don't know the specific word, you can just make it up, and Germans will 100% know exactly what you mean. So if you want to say, like, the mistake that one makes after a night of partying of not eating a good meal in the morning, there's a word you can make by just stringing along, like mistake hangover breakfast or something. And
I
that,
feel like I should learn that word.
yeah, the Fehler Frühstück machen Fehler. I don't know. I'm trying my best.
I love your example, Evan. You've got Schnapsidee, which is
Schnapsidee,
brilliant.
yeah.
And you mentioned that on your video. And that's the kind of the insight, the moment of insight that you get when you're drunk, or when you've drunk too much schnapps. So it could go either way. It could be brilliant, or it could be just completely worthless. But yeah, it's things like that which are brilliant.
Yeah, even things like the word greenery, which, you know, like shrubs, is just green stuff, which it really tells you everything you need to know. It's green, it's stuff, it's green stuff, Grünzeug. So perfect.
It's quite like Lego. And there was
Yeah.
a great book. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was called Schadenfreude, and it was a book compiled by Ben Schott, who used to just produce lots of language miscellanies. And he decided to find all the linguistic gaps in English that he could think of and get a German translator to make up a word that kind of, you know, that translated it exactly. And there were some brilliant ones, like Deppenfahrerbeäugung, which is the compulsion to stare at someone you're overtaking in your car. And also Speichergleichmut, which is, I think it's saliva stoicism, and that's pretending not to notice when someone spits on you in conversation. And he just literally, it's just like Lego, as I say, you just kind of, you get one word and you just build it up and build it up and build it up. And you just get linguistic whoppers that are just amazing and very beautiful, I think.
And I think because English is such a Germanic language, the language of English, I feel like, is way more accepting of just throwing in a German word when we don't have one.
Yes.
Such as sometimes I hear Schadenfreude, and Wanderlust is a good one that people use quite often. And that's just 100% German word that we're just like, you know what? Yeah, it's good. We'll just take that.
I'd probably never have described German as a poetic language. You know, if you'd asked me, I'd maybe have said, oh, Italian, it's so poetic. But the way you're using these words, the way you're using these words now, it really does sound poetic to me.
Goethe. There's a lot of famous German poets, I'd say. I'd say the language, because of the grammar and the structure, really allows for more poetry, I'd say, and creating sentences with structural form to flow as poetry does.
So in terms of immersing yourself in a culture, obviously when we're traveling, a lot of people now, they don't want to be a tourist. They want to be living like a local. So apart from the obvious, like being able to order a coffee, how has knowing a local language allowed you to properly immerse yourself in a culture?
I think that, well, first of all, I think there's more of an acceptance really from the people that you're speaking to. So it's almost like they're inviting you into the culture. Otherwise it's like just eating at McDonald's all the time. It's the kind of linguistic equivalent of that. You will never kind of get beyond the barriers of your own culture because you're not stepping beyond the kind of linguistic boundaries in a way. And you can romanticize it a bit, I think, but the sort of the intrinsic beliefs of a country is enshrined in their language, and I just don't think you can ever really get somebody if you don't have some kind of insight. You don't have to speak it fluently, but if you don't sort of immerse yourself in a way that will allow you to absorb, not just their language, but the way that they're using language, or the words that they choose, or what it says about them, I don't think you can really quite grasp where someone is coming from. So yeah, I think it opens up 1,000 different doors, whereas if you don't know the language and you just get by in English, there's probably just one.
I completely agree. I think sometimes I in the past used to be scared to try and speak a foreign language. If I couldn't say it completely correctly, I wouldn't say it at all. And I feel like it has opened a lot of doors by me just making mistakes and probably grammatically incorrectly speaking, but making an effort with a language and being able to say a few sentences. And it's allowed me to meet people I would never have met. I've been invited into people's homes, and I think you're right, it really does open a lot of doors.
Yeah.
How about you, Evan? When you've been traveling, how has it helped you?
Like when you have more understanding of a language, as I said before, I do feel like you can't learn it without learning more about the culture. And so when you learn more about a culture, you then learn more about the person associated with it. So you can just so much more easily connect to people, because it's like if you don't have any hobbies, you have not many ways to connect to people. But as soon as you learn a language, you're adding you're not just learning the language, learning so much more about a person. And so when you meet someone, like in my instance, in German, uh, even if we have nothing else in common, I'm so interested in so many facets of their upbringing and their culture, because that's what I've learned about. And so it's almost like inherently I'm now more interested in them. And so it's allowed me to meet and talk with people that I never would have met because they don't speak English. I've made quite a lot of friends on Instagram that are just German influencers that I chat with in German all the time, and they don't speak English at all. And so I wouldn't have made these friends if I hadn't wanted to learn German and had an interest in it.
Mm. You've both, I believe, lived in the UK and the US. Is that right as well, Susie? You spent some time
Yes.
in the US. So we've talked quite a bit about foreign languages, but in terms of English, how do you think it differs between the US and the UK?
That I'm a big fan of American English. I just can't understand why we reserve in Britain this real hostility towards this particular version of, of our language. And the thing I always say to people anyway when they start complaining about those Americanisms is that actually most of them began with us anyway. So we used to talk about fall for autumn, which is short for fall of the leaf, and spring was spring of the leaf, which I think is really poetic. And likewise, we had trash. We used to call pavements sidewalk. And also, when people really have a go at me on Twitter for you spelling realise with the IZE and say that's the American way, I say no, actually, it's also the Oxford way, because it's closer to the Greek etymologically. So you could say that the Americans also know a thing or two about etymology. So yes, I just don't understand why we hate Americanisms, so-called, so much. Plus, America gave us skedaddle, which is one of my all-time favorite words.
Great word.
There's so many slang words I had to learn in the UK that I still get confused with certain things. I don't know whether that I'm well chuffed means I'm very pleased or I'm not very pleased. I genuinely think they go both ways, because hear someone say, "Oh, I'm well chuffed about that," or "Oh, I'm well chuffed about that." I don't know. Whereas in the US, we also have so many different slangs depending on what area. Because I grew up in a very Italian immigrant state, there's so many words that started off as a old Italian expression, and now it's a bastardized American English one. One in specific that for some reason is popping into my head is the word agita or agita. Like, oh man, that guy on the street's giving me major agita. and that's just the Italian word of agita, agita, but slang eventually got it to agita, which just means I'm agitated. It's giving me a bit of agita.
Ah.
Do you often come across words in the UK that you haven't heard before, Britishisms?
Annoyingly all the time. A quick example, the other day I was cooking a recipe and it used scallions, and then my flatmates were like, scallions, this sounds like a pirate, it's a spring onion. And I'm like, okay, I'm
Are your
sorry.
flatmates all from the movie Oliver?
Hey, listen, one of them actually is.
Do you guys have any stories from where your knowledge has particularly helped you when you've been abroad? So maybe you've been stuck, you've had some kind of difficulty.
Last year I went to Neuschwanstein Castle in Bavaria, and you're not allowed to fly a drone there, but I wanted to fly a drone there, and so I flew a drone there. And however, I didn't have the right kit, and I tried to do it the best I can from the actual castle. I basically did such a stupid thing, and as I'm like landing it, these two German security officers just came over to me, just screaming in German, like, "You take that thing down right now!" And I'm like freaking out, but luckily I knew enough of the language that while they were like pulling me aside to like tell me off, and I managed to slip the memory card out of the drone, put it into my pocket, and then they were trying to tell me that I was doing wrong things, and I managed to get myself out of it and be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I did not know. I can't understand German that well, and I didn't read the signs, but I know enough to say I'm sorry, and I'm such an idiot." I kept saying, "Ich bin ein Dummkopf. Es tut mir leid. I'm so stupid." And they let me go, and I got good footage.
I had a similar drone story actually, so I'm
Really?
kind of the same as you. So I'll just throw the drone up and see what happens and take it down if someone requires it. And I was in Pakistan last year, and I'd got this amazing shot, and the army turned up, and it wasn't a
Oh,
great
yeah.
situation. But the only phrase that I knew was "Baisab Toda adjust caro," means like, brother, adjust a little bit. Which
was this like loosen up? Is it that kind of thing?
Chill out, bro.
Yeah, chill out, bro.
Just a drone, bro.
Well, I don't know how to say drone. I literally know that one sentence, but it was enough to actually make people smile and think, okay, she's one of us, at least with this one sentence anyway.
That's awesome.
So Evan, how do you get the what influences you with your videos? Where do you get the ideas for your different videos?
I consider a lot of my favorite videos that I make are mostly, I call them pub banter. So it's stuff that you find interesting to chat about between differences in cultures in a pub with your mates. And then I just try and go, that's a good idea. Let's not talk about it. We'll film it with our reactions and like talk about it. And yeah, basically I like it to be situational, real life stuff. Or if it's a heavily researched video, something that I care about, like the US tax system and how it's really bad for people that are expats, or the German language, just something I'm really interested in, and hope that by being really passionate about a topic, other people can see that and enjoy it as well.
One of your videos, Evan, really reminded me of going back to that question of, you know, where things have got you out of trouble. It wasn't in Germany or it was in the US, and I finished my MA in German, and then I was teaching, do you still call them freshmen, even though there were a lot of them all women, Evan? Fresh people?
You don't say fresh women unless you're hitting on them. It's freshmen, yeah.
Freshmen, okay.
Those are some fresh women.
Fresh women. Well, I was teaching a class of freshmen in their first year. So this was at the university, and they were quite reluctant. They were having to do German as their kind of compulsory, obligatory language. So they weren't very enthusiastic. And we were going through some pretty turgid German textbooks, to be fair. And I closed them, and I decided to tell them about one word, which Evan uses in his video, which somehow really got them interested. And it was Sitzpinkler. Which is basically a German word for someone, particularly a man, I think, who doesn't seem to have much oomph or courage, and it's just a weed, as we would say in British English. And Sitzpinkler is someone who wheezes sitting down or pees sitting down. And it's such a sort of strange idea, very, very German probably. But that really opened their eyes. And then they started looking at all sorts of other kind of compound words, which again, maybe spoke a little bit about the German culture and why they had words for these things. And then I was off, and it was such an icebreaker for me to close that textbook and then start getting into some of the words that made them laugh. Backpfeifengesicht, I might have mentioned, which I've used against Jimmy Carr on the comedy show that I do, which is a face that deserves to be slapped. So a little bit violent, but it's such a brilliant word. So yes, Evan uses lots of these in his brilliant videos. I can recommend them.
Danke.
So, Susie, we talked about how popular Evan's videos were. Obviously, Countdown has had this long-lasting popularity, and you might not necessarily have thought that a program about language would have been so popular across so many different generations. So what do you think it is about the show that draws people in time and time again?
This easy answer for me, this one. It's not about who's on it, or at least who's presenting it. I don't think. I think it's all about the format, because it's a sort of thing that I think almost everyone in the UK has seen at some point, whether they're, when they were little and they were watching with their grandparents, or I get quite a lot of emails from women who are in labour, and then it's the thing on the hospital TV screen, and you just can't help but play along. And alongside the traditional countdown, we also have, I mentioned the comedy version, 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown. And even though the audience there are laughing their heads off at the comedy, you can actually see them really trying to crack the number challenge or come up with the longest word. And some of them even got pens and paper. And there's no shame in it at all. People don't care if they look nerdy because everyone's doing the same thing.
I guess it's a way of making learning fun, isn't it? I've found this when I taught English in Vietnam, and I'd be teaching the kind of 4 and 5-year-olds, and they wouldn't know that they were learning. They just thought they just got to hang out with this girl that sang to them sometimes, and they enjoyed that. And it was a way to make learning fun without realizing that you're kind of in the classroom environment.
I think that's a brilliant idea. I went to a primary school quite recently, where they have a lot of international students. And I guess being in Oxford, there are a lot of visiting academics, and, everyone's speaking a different language. And in this one class, the kids were learning 5 different languages. And I listened in on a Mandarin class, and the teacher was just amazing. It was total immersion. So there's no English at all, but she was just hopping from one child to another and pointing something out about them, and laughing, and in a lovely way, and giving them the Chinese for it. And as well as Mandarin, they had Italian, German, French, Spanish, and English, I think it was. And they were clearly getting, if not fluent, pretty proficient in all of them. And I was just in complete awe. How amazing is that? So I think you're right. If you don't know you're learning and you're having fun at the same time, that's just the key, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think we've got time for one more question. If you guys were going to give one golden piece of advice to a younger person who was thinking about learning a language, what would it be?
I would say just be consistent with it. I think my number one advice for a lot of things is just a lot of people will say, like, how do I start? How do I start? And I always just say, just start. Just start doing it, and then try and build like at least 10 to 15 minutes a day, because a lot of people get overwhelmed at the thought of, well, it's so far away. The goal that I want, fluency, is so far away that they then don't put any time in. Whereas as long as you just dedicate a small amount of time every day and be consistent with it, you'll actually learn something. And also, even if you don't fully get to that fluency thing, you'll be able to tentatively see that you've now made progress, which then builds your confidence. So just start doing it and just try and be consistent, putting in a little bit of time a day.
For me, I would say it would be never make assumptions. So no matter what someone says to you, if someone says, oh, I don't like that language, or that just sounds really weird, or whatever, just do what you want to do. And if you find something in a language that makes your heart sing genuinely, just says something to you, forget what everyone else is saying, just go for it, because that way you'll really find your passion.
Follow your passions. I like that advice. So I think, unfortunately, that's probably all we've got time for today. But a really big thank you, Susie and Evan, for those interesting stories and all your insights.
Thanks for having
us.
It's
not often that I get to use the word Backpfeifengesicht, so I'm very happy.
Oh, I use it every day. I live with some mean people.
So next time, we're going to be diving into the world of sport, and I'm going to be joined by footballing legend, Mr. David James. In honour of our expert guest Susie Dent, who's known for her word of the day on Twitter, we are giving you the opportunity to win a year's subscription to the Rosetta Stone app. All you have to do is tweet Susie with your favourite foreign word of the day from a language discussed in this episode, along with the hashtag #MoreThanWords, and Susie will retweet her favourite. Bon chance!